Sean, can I start with you?
Yep.
Could you tell us a little bit about your story, why you got into mental health, and also what your current role is with St Vincent's?
Yeah, so kind of full disclosure, I'm not somebody who ever is dishonest in this process. So my journey started when I was quite young, actually. I learned about the word suicide when I was about 16. My uncle, who had a really challenging relationship with himself, died by suicide. And so the first time I kind of understood what that was, and I apologise if that seems a bit, in your face as a bit of an introduction, was understanding that he had a diagnosis of schizophrenia and was unable to kind of rationalise himself and his circumstances. And yeah, unfortunately, that's my first kind of experience.
And how old were you?
16.
Yeah.
But I think the amazing thing for me was it sparked a genuine and ongoing curiosity into kind of the world of psychiatry and mental health. It showed me my family at its most broken, but it also kind of showed them at the most fixed, I guess. And it really motivated me to want to kind of go and make a difference. And that still sits at the heart of things for me, is that I can make a difference. So I'm a mental health nurse, and I've been at Vinnie's now for 9 years in a range of different roles, working across the emergency department, working in our community mental health services, and in the last few years, I've actually become the lead over mental health, homeless health, and drug and alcohol services. So I get the really awesome job of leading an amazing group of people like Zal and others who get to go out and make a genuine impact on people on a day-to-day basis. Whilst there's the meetings and the operations and the kind of the business that we need to kind of facilitate and run, we get this just beautiful opportunity to kind of see our workforce make an impact, and it's an impact that's felt nationwide. There's this thing, something about St Vincent's, the reputation, the kind of the prestige the sisters have established over so many years. But also it's a city, right? And the cities have resources, cities draw people in, cities are where people fall over and get picked up, cities are where we all go to work, many of us, and they foster community. And so St Vincent's sits at the centre of that community, and I get the real privilege to get paid to do a job, which brings me immense joy, and work with some pretty, and when I say people, I don't just mean the people we employ, but the people we serve. Pretty awesome.
So I'm going to share my personal story as well in response to what Sean said. So I was 17 when I had my first experience with an acute mental health unit, not for myself, but as a carer. And that changed the direction of my life, the same as Sean. So I've worked for 20 years building health infrastructure across Australia. And at 23, I built my first acute mental health unit. So I think that it's really important with that 20,000 people in our community. Mental health does not discriminate. It happens to high-functioning people. It happens to your loved ones. It happens to you. So I think for us, we had a very personal experience that changed the direction of our lives. And Zal's going to share her story, and so is Matt too. But you've got 4 people up here that have had serious impact in their life with mental health, and I think we're really keen to sort of share that with you. So Sean, just walk us through currently what happens when somebody seeks mental health care at St Vincent's, and also I think really importantly with respect to the Urban Health Hub, which we all think is a tremendous initiative, what that's going to do to improve access.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the challenge at the moment is that we're in a busy metro city hospital. Unfortunately, people they get to the point where there's no other access opportunity. And honestly, I would say to anyone in this room or anyone you know, if there's ever that emergency requirement, go to the ED, go and get help. Don't sit there, don't sit and worry about these things unnecessarily. What we're trying to do though is take that environment and put it somewhere much more therapeutic, somewhere which sits at the center of a community. The Green Park, a beautiful gift from the Current Foundation, to kind of revolutionize how we do things differently. And that's about meeting people in the community, not in an emergency department where they've really had to kind of be addled and struggle to get to this point of crisis. To be somewhere where they can walk in and meet, whether it's a clinician like myself, whether it's Zal, having access that's ready and available 7 days a week, which isn't going to be met with, you're in a waiting room, you're next in queue, you've got a 6-hour wait. These are real challenges, and we know that from the data. Many of the people who access the emergency department, it's not the first time they've gone. It's often the second, third, fourth. They really struggle to actually even stay in that environment because it's not conducive to that need at that time. So we're designing something with community. We're back. We're designing something with community, so we're looking at the people of Darlinghurst, the people of the city, the people who are already accessing our services, who we've got a lived experience and a living relationship with, and we're keen to make something really special. There will be a mental health component, but we don't believe in we want a one-door approach. So this service will also cater to people who have challenges with their drug and alcohol use, substance use. They might be experiencing socioeconomic challenges. They might be experiencing homelessness and housing challenges. So it's really going to be a hub, a community-based hub, where if you come with any of those challenges, or anything, frankly, like, we're not going to turn you away. We're going to embrace you as the sisters did, and we're going to make sure that you've got a good outcome as a result.
And so good to hear the mission come through there, Sean. Zal? Earlier, I think we've discussed this evening, Jeremy mentioned it, around the peer support model. It's a fantastic model, which Zal will explain to you if you don't know about it. This is essentially where workers with lived experience walk alongside carers and patients and what Zal calls clients, which I think is really beautiful. So Zal, could you sort of explain your peer support role and maybe give us a bit of insight?
Sure. Firstly, I'd just like to say it's an incredibly interesting question, just because when I first started, I was a bit like, what is a peer support worker? I knew I had lived experience. I had very little on my CV when I went for the job interview. I will admit that, a very little work experience as such. But I've got quite a lot of, particularly hospital experience, but lived experience both in substance use and mental health conditions. And I was like, well, what is it? And they were like, well, we just want you to be passionate about your work, so we don't really want to provide any structure. And I was a bit like, okay, how's that going to work for me? I kind of need to know, you go here, you go there, this is what you do with your clients, or, they were calling them patients at the time, and so forth. But I found it really encouraging and really wonderful. It's a continual learning process, so it's continually evolving and developing, and it's mostly driven literally by my clients. So their needs, their unique needs, I just change what I do each day around that, so that it is very person-centered and incredibly trauma-informed, because I myself have a lot of trauma. So I can relate to their trauma and share my lived experience with them. And I have clients who have, attempts of suicide, which I have as well. Other clients who have mental health conditions, which I have as well. All of my clients have obviously drug use, substance use, or alcohol use that are happening. And so we can, draw commonalities between each other and, find a thread which is totally different from what you sit down with a counsellor or a doctor and sort of tell them your story. I think it's sort of the space between is how I like to think it, the patients and the clinicians, We bridge the gap between them and offer, to break down stigma and discrimination as well, that it happens particularly for people with who have substance use issues, but also obviously for mental health, people with mental health concerns. And so we make it easier for the patients to come to the hospital.
And Zal, I think for those of you who've had the privilege of not having to go through a process of subacute mental health or acute mental health or these sorts of things, I think one of the things that I can share, and Zal's going to then share her experience, which is I can share the experience as a carer and Zal can share the experience as a patient. But I think, dropping your family member off to a voluntary, private or public unit and leaving them there and going home and knowing that the state that they're in is probably the worst feeling that you will ever have in your life. And I think beyond that, when that patient deteriorates potentially and needs to be admitted involuntarily and needs to receive ECT treatment, and that is a family member in your home, the scars that you carry for the rest of your life and the resilience that you build and the trauma that that creates is something that no one will ever repair. And so I think for the units that I've been, have had the privilege to work in and had the privilege to be able to design and facilitate, we've always been so conscious of how they feel, how they look, what it's like for the patient through that journey. So emergency department, Sean, you've spoken about it. They can be really horrible places for mental health patients. They can be refuge there for days and weeks on end in some of the public hospitals across Australia. Just give us a bit of a sense maybe of a time that you'd come to the emergency department or any of the...
Okay, well that's a lot of times that I've come to the emergency department. Most often, admittedly, I came in through comas. I've had quite a few comas in my life, so through an ambulance and would wake up after, in my coma and after the coma, sorry. But, other times I've come in from suicide attempts as well because there's, I would take too much morphine and Valium and alcohol, and I would come in and at least once I clinically died from those attempts. They resuscitated me and brought me in, but I woke up. I'll show you this particular experience because it really impacted my life, but I woke up and my feet, the first thing I remember is my feet just slammed to the bottom of the bed, and it was like the hospital bed, so it was metallic, and I had this tube down my throat because I'd been intubated, and I can remember distinctly there were two people there, and one of them was laughing at me, of all things, and the doctor with him said, no, don't pull it out, it's really delicate, I will do it. And he was a trainee and learning in ICU, and that was my experience, and I just thought, well, you lived, you survived, and I'm really, really grateful I did, like so grateful. And yeah, so I've struggled with many problems like that.
And I think the point of these sort of traumatic stories, in a sense, is that the Health Hub is going to be a place where, before we get to this point, we have a door, and we have a framework, and we have an opportunity to not slip between the gaps, and to have a place where we're accepted for whatever place we are at. And like Sean, you mentioned, it might not be specific mental illness, it might be something alongside it that can catalyse and become a mental illness, those sorts of things. So creating that sort of network.
I think that's the opportunity here is we are unintentionally causing harm to people who are reaching out for help. And the facilities that we've got right now, unfortunately, they're entrenched in people. That it's formed part of who they are because it's the place where you go and get help, but at the same time have this unintentional harm, and it compounds the trauma and it makes accessing services incredibly difficult. And whereas this is a new beginning, and it's a service which doesn't just kind of begin with this beautiful opportunity to meet someone like Zal, who's got this lived experience, who's relatable and kind of threads the gap between kind of the patient and the clinicians. But you also get to have a mental health assessment or a drug and alcohol assessment. You get to be enrolled in a digital health program and actually have free to access services that are available right there and then. We have this really exciting opportunity on our level 1 space where we'll be looking to expand our psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy trials. We'll be looking at what we can do with AI and virtual reality. Whilst we don't depend on these services, we certainly see the necessity of making them augmented with person-delivered services. So really maintaining that kind of environmental, but sustainable future for kind of healthcare economics.
Matt, you've been very quiet there, so I'll bring you into the conversation now. Matt, can you just give us a bit of a sense of your connection to the Curran Foundation and also your personal experience?
Absolutely. As I said earlier, my family and myself have been involved with the Curran Foundation for over 30 years, and it's been a great foundation to be a supporter of, and it's almost like a family. But so I've been to many Curran Foundation events over a long, long time, and for a vast majority of them, I saw it as a great opportunity to enjoy the fine champagne and red wine and alcohol. I was quite happy to share my story with you all tonight, but if I go too long, please just interrupt me because I
I will.
Yeah, once I start, I sometimes fail to stop. But I'll give you a summary. But I was born. I have 2 loving parents, married, still together over 50 years. A great sister. Always was well. Didn't want for anything. Went to a private school. Went on some overseas holidays, and this is not the stereotype that I had in my mind of somebody who is an alcoholic or a drug addict. And I've come to understand how indiscriminate addiction and mental health is. I had my first drink at 13. I drank to blackout, and from 13 onwards, I would say that probably for the 15, 18 years after that, I probably drank in a heavy social manner, and then it sort of escalated after there. Addiction's a tricky one. It's exponential. It gets exponentially worse. So when you see somebody and they just seem to be getting out of control and they sort of fall off that cliff, it's been happening for a long time. And for me, that started probably in and around 2011, 2012, was when family and friends started to notice that my behaviour, especially around drinking, was not normal. I couldn't see it at the time. That would have been the first time that I went to a treatment centre, primarily to appease the family and friends who wanted me to go there. It was easier to go than to have the conversation. And for me, this continued once I started to get some knowledge around it at that stage. But that's why I find the Health Hub so interesting, because when I was going through this, there was limited knowledge. The extent of my drinking took me to trouble with the police, holding cells, criminal convictions. It took me into St Vincent's multiple times. And to understand the power, and this is how I felt, the power of addiction, I would walk out of St Vincent's ICU, and that day I would be back drinking. That day. I would often say to myself and say to loved ones, I won't pick up a drink today, and 4 hours later I would be. Now, when I said it, I 100% meant it. I was honestly not going to have another drink that day. But that's the power of addiction when you are in the midst of it. And I was clinically diagnosed with depression around 2015, 16. Now, keep in mind, here I am, this is the insanity of it, clinically diagnosed with depression, yet I'm putting a depressant into my body on a daily basis thinking I'm going to get better. But my head told me that's what you do. So this continued on for quite a period of time. I was very fortunate that I think in my drinking career, I had gone almost as far as I could go. The next step was death, and I wasn't far away from it. And a couple of friends turned up to my door. I had no idea they were coming, but I opened the door and said, what took you so long? And that was the last time that I had a drink. So the last, my sobriety date's the 23rd of June 2018, so it's nearly 7 years. And what's interesting is I'm very grateful to have gotten to the other side of this. And I think I think there is an element of luck. I believe that there's good luck and there's bad luck. But I think there had to be, for me, a dramatic change of perception of myself, a dramatic change of perception of the world. I saw myself as a victim. I saw myself as unfairly treated. I saw myself as unheard. But I never looked to see what my role was in my life. I was outsourcing the blame to everybody and everything, but not once did I consider to say, well, what do I have as a role in this? And so for me, coming out the other side And I'm aware of this on a daily basis. You know, I know that I am one drink away from literally death. That's what goes in my head. Now, I don't think about a drink. I don't think about drugs. I live in a very positive mindset. I live my well-being, which is at the forefront of my mind on a daily basis. Now, I'm in the best shape I've ever been in my life. And I'm not sorry for that. In the past, I would have felt sorry. I would have felt maybe I shouldn't be so well. But I know that I do certain things in my day and in my week and in my year, and I hold myself accountable to live a way that, I just try to be, these days, a useful member of society, which I've got to say I wasn't in the past. So, seeing what we're talking about today, and when I met Zal the other day and listened to parts of her story, I love hearing those things. This is a beautiful world if you know how to look at it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing. So to finish, particularly Sean and Matt, can you just explain to the room how philanthropy, hospitals and community work together? Because I think for the two of you, you know how powerful this mix is and what a difference it can make. And I think everyone here would love to hear your perspective.
Yeah. Do you want to go first?
Please, I'm going to follow from you.
Look, I mean, I have worked in a few different places in Brazil, New Zealand, the UK, none of which have what St Vincent's offers in respects of philanthropy and that kind of intersection with community and genuine community partnership and then the clinicians and the hospital space. It makes all the difference, is what I'm going to say. We're all very aware of how the government funds the health system, so I won't labour that. Correct. And so what we get to do is we get to work with people in a really special, connected way. We're able to use opportunities like tonight to springboard some initiatives and ideas and some research sparks that our clinicians have, that our community have, to really transform the difference. So it's the difference between going into hospital, having a 4 to 6 week stay, receiving some treatment and leaving, and it's the difference of going into hospital, being provided with a new wardrobe of clothes, being able to be partnered with somebody with lived experience, because these are things that get funded through events like tonight, being able to engage with a redeveloped new digital health platform, and those are only possible through philanthropy. It's about genuine listening and partnership, and some of the best things that I've seen have been literally back of envelope conversations with frontline clinicians saying our experience could be better if we in the ED, we're stuck there for now, Green Park's coming, but if we could just get some iPads and headphones and actually make the experience a more enjoyable one for a person who's in need, again, game changing. It impacts our education system. 3 years ago, somebody turned around and said, hey, do you know what would be great if we offered free postgraduate mental health education? 2 years later, we offer that. We've had 7 nurses pass through. We've had postgraduate certificates in mental health nursing, and that has a direct impact on the community. That means that the nurses we employ are able to get more skills and provide more expert care to the community we're working with. We've had thank you to Charles, but also the Cunningham Foundation as well, supported a whole psychiatry program. We've had an additional registrar be available in our emergency department to assist with research, to assist with frontline assessments. Again, things that just wouldn't be possible without this genuine partnership approach with the St Vincent's Current Foundation.
And I think to add to that, what's really important is the retention, because the investment in the staff that are being sought after and recruited, that's actually something that's incredibly important to Anna and to Richard, to make sure that they've got the best people that have the best training and that have the ability to get to where they want to in their professional career whilst not having to leave the system and not having to leave St Vincent.
Look, that was a very living experience. I'm pleased to say we have 4 vacancies and a wait list. It's something we do very well at St Vincent's.
Yeah, it's amazing. Matt, your perspective?
I think looking at such an initiative, such as a health hub, this is really it's revolutionary thinking when it comes to the combination of, peer support and a number of other medical and other different services. And, I think from a philanthropic point of view, it's that contribution that helps get these concepts alive. Things that are not a standard practice. And obviously, with my background, I'm very, passionate about this. And, it was interesting, like, when you look at peer support, and I wanted to share a quick story because I was away recently, and this to me was a way that I saw it working in my head, and Zal can probably, we can talk about it later. But I was away with my daughter and we were in Hawaii, and I was walking early in the morning because I like to walk early in the morning, and there's a meeting in the middle of the park, and it's a 12-step meeting, it's an AA meeting. And I walk past and I know it's there, sitting in the middle of the park, so I thought I'd go and join it. Because I actually enjoy it because you get different people from all around the world. And at this meeting, there was a man sitting on a bench about 20 metres away, and he was quite a big African-American man, and it was obviously that he was homeless. And he walked up and he stood on the side of this meeting, and he basically said his name. He said he didn't know what to do. He said, I tried to kill myself this morning, and I just thought I'd come and say hi. And then he walked back over and he sat down. And one of the guys at the meeting ran out and said hello and came back, and 15 minutes later it all finished. And I walked up to him afterwards, and he'd gone to a different bench now. And I went up there and said hello, and this other guy from New Jersey came and said hello, and his name was Jeremiah. He was ex-NFL player. He's in Hawaii, and he tried to kill himself this morning. He'll try again this afternoon. Just doesn't know what to do, but he saw this group of people and he thought, I'll pop my head in. And 3 other guys came and joined, and within 15 minutes, from 6 people who had never met each other, one who was putting his hand up in need, one of these guys had got him into a car and had taken him to a mental health department specialising in suicide prevention. Said, we won't go to that one because I've actually been there and it's terrible. And this guy had been in there 90 days beforehand, and he was the one who did it. So when you look at a peer support program, the level of empathy that is involved, because you know that person is speaking the same language. They think the way you think. They can understand what you're saying. It's quite amazing. It's quite amazing. And to offer what we have here and have that level of support, it's amazing the changes that this will make, not only in the person who is experiencing these issues, but also the family members, because it's like family members don't generally know what to do. My parents had no idea. My sister had no idea. To be honest, I had no idea. But they engaged with some business at the time, and this is going back quite a few years now. But to go to somewhere that you can actually go and ask some questions, it's something that everyone close to the person going through these mental health issues, they are brought in whether they like it or not. And I think this kind of initiative is something that can support so many people. So.
Thanks so much, Matt. So we're going to wrap up, but it's been an honour and a pleasure for the 4 of us to share some insight, share our story, give you a sense of the vision that we have for the Health Hub. And I think more than anything, we're really privileged, I think, to be here telling our stories and to have so many people listening with such an open heart. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alex.